I hope that the participants in the next session entitled Opportunities and Barriers for Growth and Job Creation in the Tourism and Transportation Sector to come to the podium. These are Engineer Ahmed AlEissa, Ms. Sumeira Isaacs, Tony Fernandes, Ms. Andrew Cleaves, and Mohinder Singh. I hope that they will join us in order to start this session, as I said, entitled Opportunities and Barriers for Growth and Job Creation in the Tourism and Transportation Sector. This session will be moderated by the executive partner of the consultancy services for trade transactions in the MENA region. Gandier is the partner responsible for Ernst and Young company for the MENA region. He's a chartered accountant and he worked with Ernst and Young for 33 years in Canada and Australia and the United Arab States. And he spent 20 years with us here in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. I give the floor now to Gandier.
Thank you very much. Your Royal Highnesses and honored guests, and in particular, I'm going to try and face a little bit more to our lady friends and sisters over here because they seem to be getting everybody's back. But thank you very much and welcome to the session, the panel session on opportunities and barriers for growth and job creation in the tourism and transport sector. Let me give you a couple of statistics. Tourism creates about 9% of global GDP, gross domestic product. And it accounts for approximately 1 out of every 11 jobs on the planet. Think of that, about 1 out of every 11 jobs on the planet is in the tourism sector. Tourism is also seen as creating major potential to alleviate poverty and also to create employment for youth and people of all social classes. But it's hard to think of tourism without transportation. If you go back to 1841, just after the development of the steam engine, someone by the name of Thomas Cook, maybe a few people have heard of Thomas Cook, was the first one to organize some touristic travel using trains to take some tourists from where they lived to a tourism site. And from there, you could not separate tourism and transportation. But transportation in its own right is a major employer and contributor to economic development and job creation. And it's actually one of the few things in politics that both sides of the political debate agree on. If you look back to the financial crisis and the stimulus initiatives in the US, Republicans, Democrats, conservatives, liberals, politicians in big urban areas and rural areas, they were all crying out for funds for transportation, for their transportation programs. And not because those funds just created an immediate impact, it also increased the competitiveness of moving people and goods and services from point A to point B for many, many, many years after those funds were spent. So that's why today we've lumped the two topics of tourism and transportation in the creation of jobs for Saudi youth. So what we're going to do is we've got an excellent panel today, and the panel has experience locally and internationally, and they're going to bring that to bear in their presentations, and then they'll take questions from the floor, and of course we have to have some voting. So without further ado, let me introduce the first panel member. So to my right is Engineer Ahmed Mohammed AlEissa. Engineer Ahmed is an Assistant Vice President for Licensing at the Supreme Commission for Tourism and Antiquities. He's a civil engineer from King Saud University, and he's worked with the Ministry of Transportation and the National Guard before being with the SCTA. Engineer Ahmed will use his 10 years experience of being at the SCTA to share his views around employment opportunities in the tourism sector. But I think most important, he's going to talk about what needs to be done in Saudi Arabia to improve domestic tourism and hence create more jobs for our Saudi youth. So Engineer Ahmed.
Thank you very much. In the name of Allah, peace and praise be upon Prophet. Today I feel that I'm lucky to come after the session addressed by His Royal Highness Prince Salman bin Sultan, as he reviewed many of the future perspectives and trends. He pointed out the great efforts exerted by the Supreme Council of Tourism, or rather the Supreme Commission for Tourism in Saudi Arabia, or by the partners of the Commission, or at the level of the several government decisions taken recently. Therefore, I would like today to focus on certain indicators that might help us in knowing the volume of the large market. Why is Prince Sultan is focusing today on the great opportunities available in Saudi Arabia? Figures show us the volume of tourism at the global level, but also at the level of the kingdom, and be it at the level of the GDP or at the level of the contribution directly or indirectly, at the level of job opportunities, or at the level of financial investment. This slide shows 2013 and 2020. Where would we get in terms of the contribution of tourism in the GDP? This is our ambition. These are the least scenarios. We may have higher scenarios and go further more, inshallah. The indicators show the tourism at the level of the globe. Our ranking is not satisfactory. No matter how much we talk at the level of the investment corporation, despite all our efforts, our ranking still comes at the 184th state, which is not satisfactory to us and is not appropriate for our ambitions. We are a member of the G20, but at the level of tourism, our figure is a little bit late. Our direct and indirect figures in the tourism sector in the kingdom show us that between the growth that took place between 2010 and 2013 and up to 2020, we may reach 1,700,000 direct and indirect jobs. And when we're speaking about direct jobs, we are speaking about jobs that are related to tourism directly, such as hotels and tourism agencies. And as regards the indirect, we are speaking about activities which service tourism but are not included under the title of tourism. The growth of touristic jobs, you may observe the difference between what is expected now. They are speaking about 3%, we are speaking about 10%. This is large inflation. We need, therefore, to provide job opportunities and to prepare the Saudi youth, both male and female, to avail themselves of these opportunities. This also indicates the figures between the activities, and you may observe that the restaurants and the entertainment may take the greater aspect, but then comes the transportation. It is clear that the two sectors taken care by this forum, that is tourism and transportation, may represent the larger percentage of the jobs provided by tourism. These figures, in order to deal with them, we of course have challenges and incentives. We should understand our challenges, but we have great capabilities that may help us to be ambitious to achieve these or to meet these challenges. At the level of investment in tourism in general, there is no doubt that I'm speaking today about challenges. There is no doubt that competition faced by tourism sector might lead to a great challenge. The weakness of the tourism programs and products in terms of quality and quantity, and the lack of the necessary infrastructure to support this trend. The traditional handicrafts, also spoken about by the Prince, clearly there is still tourism is only seasonal, and this really affects the growth of investments. The level of the culture of tourism planning is still not satisfactory at the kingdom, and it does not help the growth of certain investments. Also, we have the problem of finance, which represents a great impediment which we seek to resolve. Also supporting the SMEs and the market, the labor market in general. In addition to these challenges, we have to recognize and to take pride that we have incentives that help us to work and encourage us to achieve greater growth and to work and do more efforts. We have now great geographical space. We have several civilizations and archaeological monuments on which we can build. We have a very strong Saudi economy and competitive. We have a great purchasing power internally and externally. We have political, economic and security stability, great government support as well, high number of population. We do not depend on external tourism, therefore our purchasing power is internal. We have also the religious sites. We have an increasing number of Hajjis every year. Also, we have diversified geographical sites. We have coastal and mountainous and desert lands. This is available in many of our cities. It is true that we have a lack of infrastructure for tourism, but we have many cities. Alhamdulillah. This is relating to investment. If you go to the other aspect, that is employment, we find challenges from two perspectives. Today I'm speaking about this because we, at the level of the Commission, speak about the two aspects. People always speak about two sides, the government and the private sector. There is, to my mind, the third party, that is the youth. We do respect the private sector, but there is a third aspect or a party which we should encourage, that is youth. For the businessmen, I think there are many challenges. However, this is the most important one of them. Maybe, of course, is the lack of necessary experience. I do recognize that there are a limited number of colleges and institutes, and their outputs are not satisfactory to the private sector. Also, the weak level of English, which is a great impediment in the sector of tourism. At least we have to cover it. If we the high cost of Saudis, we compared with the expatriates. If we compare one person with another, without comparing the qualifications, because the expatriates qualification might be lower, so the cost might be lower. Also, we have the element of the weak productivity of local labor. I'm speaking now about what I hear from the private sector. We believe it completely. We may disagree with them sometimes, but this is a view of the entrepreneurs or the businessmen. Many of you may have heard that 3 months ago, the law regulating tourism has been adopted. Now we're waiting for the regulation regulating archaeological sites. All these decisions and laws contain some enablers which were given to the private sector to help the private sector to grow its investments, also developing the professional standards for investment in the area of tourism. The Commission developed about 20 portfolios, 10 at the sector of accommodation and 10 in the sector of travel and tourism. These are available to all free of charge. They are provided for both the private sector and the training sector, with the hope that this will constitute the beginning of the processes of training. Also working as a focal point between the employer and the employee. The Commission launched and announced a month ago an electronic website which became close to or near the Havis website, but it links between both parties. The employer can announce the vacancies he has, and the job seekers can get the information about that. And matching could take place between both in order to find the appropriate job opportunity for any job seeker. Thank you. I thank you all for listening.
Shukran jazilan, Engineer Ahmed. So Engineer Ahmed presented some of the challenges but opportunities in the domestic tourism sector. Let's stay on the theme of maybe some challenges and move towards public transportation, some of the challenges and opportunities in public transportation, particularly buses in the region. And we'll take some global experiences and case studies from that. So our next speaker is Mr. Andrew Cleaves. Andrew is the Managing Director of National Express's International Division. And National Express International, they bid for transport networks across the Middle East and Europe. Most recently, Andrew's been involved, about the last 6 months, in the Kingdom, where he was bidding for the bus transport operating license in Riyadh, and he's also submitted similar bid in Bahrain. Previously, Andrew was the Managing Director of National Express's UK Coach division, and he's worked his way up to the CEO of Tube Lines. So Andrew will discuss his experience in both developed and developing markets with respect to public transportation. He's going to paint us a picture of why public transportation in MENA and Saudi Arabia in particular, in conjunction with the private sector, has a very bright future. Andrew.
Thank you very much indeed. It's a real honor to speak here in this historic city of Jeddah. I believe that over the coming years, we'll see a transformation in transportation in the kingdom. And as a potential investor in Saudi Arabia, I find this a very exciting time. I'd like to talk to you today about partnerships, and why I think they're incredibly important. I think working with the private sector and the public sector together is the only way to unlock the jobs and the economic benefits, which are significant. I'm looking for my presentation. It appears that whilst National Express buses arrive on time, National Express bus presentations can sometimes be late. Aha, there we are. There we are, right, we're up and working. So my presentation today is around partnership. Our international experience is such that only when public transport systems are delivered together in partnership can we unlock the jobs and the economic benefit. I believe that the public and private sectors have very important but very different roles to play, and getting this balance right is absolutely critical. Our previous experience has shown that partnerships really can deliver their objectives. I'll give you quite a lot of our experience from the UK. But for example, in the UK, the partnership that we work with in the centre of the UK has delivered a new smartphone bus app. People today, more and more, using the virtual world to book their travel. We're introducing environmentally friendly buses. We've doubled the number of ticket inspectors. Good, honest travellers like to know that those who are not stand the risk of having their journeys disrupted by an inspector. And the seamless flow of partnership arrangements over the years has led to some significant improvements, including some record-breaking punctuality in the areas that we work. If we look at the most recent partnership that we've signed with the authority in the centre of the UK, this has delivered some 450 million riyals of investment recently. We continue to work together to improve services. If they're coordinated, then I believe that partnerships can deliver improvements in customer satisfaction and growth. This is both in jobs and in people's ability to get to jobs. I said earlier that I thought the roles were very different. I think that the private sector is best targeted at state-of-the-art customer service and vehicles, whereas the public sector focuses on the infrastructure, both virtual and real, and also working with the transport authorities to ensure the flow of public transport around the city, which is, of course, critical for both safety and reliability. This leaves the private sector to focus on customer service, safety, and the vehicles themselves. And working with our public sector partner in the UK, we're delivering some real improvements in terms of gold bus corridors, specific best practice from around the world. This graph is rather complicated, but it shows that partnerships work. The graph on the side is the passenger journeys per head of population, and the axis along the bottom is the size of the conurbation. So you can see that the conurbations to the right of the graph, the biggest, where they're working in partnership, have the highest level of passenger ridership. So partnerships deliver ridership. Specifically, we've been working with our partner in Coventry, a city in the Midlands in the UK, where 3 years ago, ridership was falling off. The graph there shows the year-on-year ridership. 3 years ago, people were not using the buses. We then signed a partnership, invested in new buses themselves, brought on a smart card, brought on improved communications, and you can see that over a really relatively short period of time, growth has been restored, and we're now seeing some steady growth and improvement in customer satisfaction. Working together, we've improved the marketing, we've introduced smart cards, introduced technology on the buses so that we know where they are and how safely they're being driven, and that drives reliability. So looking at the bigger picture, recent results show that partnership is delivering real benefits. These include an increase in overall satisfaction, an increase in punctuality, and also an improvement in personal security. These are all things that matter to passengers. As has been said, we've been working in Riyadh, and we did some research with local people, local young people, women and men, and expats. And we tried to summarize this in some of these slides. So what people in Saudi Arabia are saying about transport is that, for example, women feel totally dependent on male drivers. Non-car drivers, non-car owners are reliant on others. There's quite a consistent moan about congestion, and also, of course, cost and convenience is absolutely the key factor. People will use public transport when they make sensible economic decisions for themselves, that this is the best form of transport for them. Some views that we got, and this is from the forums that we carried out in the Kingdom, people saying, well, there's not enough seats for women. This is certainly a challenge which we need to overcome. No stops where I want to go. Their perceptions of poor quality service, whether or not it's a viable choice. You can see that people are raising some significant concerns about public transport. And again, I believe that only working together with public and private partnership can we overcome these objections and deliver good service and good passenger growth. When people are given the facts around what can happen with public service, people do say, okay, that's great, well, it can allow me to travel when and where I want. It can be safer, certainly cheaper than a taxi or a car. And people see transport as a bridge between the conservative world and open world. They see it as part of the drivers of change, ability to get to jobs, ability to get to new parts of the world. Therefore, I put to you that well-run urban networks deliver significant economic benefits for a number of sectors and areas of the economy. This is because buses, for example, don't just link households and jobs and education. They do that very well. But actually, bus users in the UK, for example, make shopping visits, make visits to leisure, and we've talked about tourism already. In the UK, people who travel by bus add something like 150 billion rials to the economy as a result of those bus journeys. So I believe a strong public transport system enables people to get to jobs and in themselves create jobs. For every £1 of public spending, for every £1 rial of public spending, 2.5 are generated. So a good public transport system supports flexible labour markets, allows people to get to jobs easier. They actually create jobs, of course. One of the things we're proud of in the UK is that we're the biggest private sector employer in Birmingham, where we're based, in the city that we're based. And also, of course, there's the spin-off because of the spend that people bring as part of their travels. So both the public and the private sector roles are important but different, and this is something we see across the globe. The public sector recognises the need to invest in infrastructure and to manage the risks so that the private sector can do what it does best. That's investing in the product, innovating to meet customer demands, and developing staff to improve customer service. And with that, I believe that we can have quick, easy, clean, and safe public transport in the Kingdom, and that these qualities are the ones that are needed for people to change their behaviors, to go from either not traveling at all to using the bus transport, or from traveling by car to using bus. They're very simple words, but these are very, very tough targets to achieve. Finally, I'd like to give you what I think are the enablers for partnership. Certainly, I believe that there's a need for increased discussion at an early stage between partners to improve the joint objectives. I think there needs to be greater clarity of the tender scoring regime so that actually, absolutely what is required by the authority is delivered by the tenderers, and that there's a focus on the output specifications. All too often in transport we hear about number of buses or what have you. Actually, I think the important thing is to be clear about what the outcomes are, the speed of travel, the reliability, the safety, and with those output specifications, I believe a partnership can be formed. And of course, we need to bring in a great deal of expertise in National Express's circumstances. We have expertise in the United States, in Morocco, in the UK. So improvements in the visa process to allow that expertise to be brought in and to be put to work on the tendering and the understanding of partnership would be welcomed. So in conclusion, I believe that partnership working is crucial, that successful public transport markets are built by both public and private sectors, that partnership itself mutually supportive to investment and innovation, and that it drives safety, passenger growth, customer satisfaction, and helps to sustain those in the long term. Transport really can create good, skilled jobs for local people. And I thank you very much for listening.
Andrew, thank you very much. You highlighted some of the challenges on the demand side, certainly, of convincing people to move and start to use public transport. I see some equal challenging, or some equally challenges on the supply side in terms of getting young Saudis to work in the sector, whether that's as bus drivers or in other parts of the whole value chain of transport. So that question may come up from the floor during the Q&A session, and I believe we have it as one of the polls. So I think what we'll do now then is we'll move back to tourism. Engineer Ahmed talked about some of the challenges. What I'd like to do now is introduce our next panelist, who's going to talk about the size of the prize, and the prize being employment, and the massive potential prize that there is there. So let me introduce Sumeira Isaacs. Sumeira is the IMEA Chief Operating Officer of MCI Group, which is an independent global association communications and event management company. It sounds like a very important title, and she didn't always have that very important title. At one stage, she was simply a ticket supervisor for an airline. And along the ways, she started, managed, and owned businesses. Today, she's responsible for the strategic management of the business, leading a team of 90 full-time people out of a much larger employment workforce, spread over Dubai, India, and Canada, and monitoring the day-to-day operations, business development, and most importantly, the bottom line results of the company. So I think what Sumeira is going to try and describe to us is this potential prize in terms of employment, and not just employment of men in large urban centers, but other demographics, employment of men, employment of women, employment of highly educated people, employment of school leavers, employment of people from the large urban centers, but also from the villages. So it's a diverse opportunity to create jobs. So Sumeira, thank you very much. I look forward to it.
Thank you very much, Phil. Thank you for that introduction. So I'd like to just really recap a little bit on the importance and the purpose and functions of the travel and tourism industry. A lot has been said today and debated about it. So just to recap that, what does this industry bring to the economy? So it helps to showcase the destination. It becomes a great platform for the brand positioning of the destination. In the ease of doing business, helps showcases its heritage and culture. It keeps us competitive, creates alternate source of income other than your regular source in Saudi Arabia's case, is oil and gas. And it keeps us competitive. It induces infrastructure development and growth. So road and transportation is just one example of it. But in addition to that, hotels, airports, more and more the destinations are realizing the value of having bigger airports, bigger convention centers. And it helps fuel the economy by creating jobs. And jobs, not just seasonal jobs, but year-round, and jobs not for one sector of the population, like men only, but also for ladies or young entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs. So I have used the baseline for my presentation today, since this is forum here that PowerPoint presentations are very critical and numbers are very critical. So I decided that I want to use the numbers from the World Travel and Tourism Council and their projections that they did in the World Economic Forum in Davos in 2013. So as per WTTC, that this is really the size of the GDP for travel and tourism sector. It's at 6 trillion, the sector already accounts for 9% of the world GDP, and it provides 120 million direct jobs and 125 million indirect jobs. This means that the industry now accounts, as Phil already mentioned, for 1 in 11 jobs on the planet, a number that could even rise to 1 in 10 jobs by 2022. So definitely a sector that cannot be ignored by any developing economy. In comparison, if you look at the business tourism, it's rather slightly smaller, but it's more condensed and more intense, and it's more high yielding, because for every dollar invested in this type of tourism, product generates $17 in trade. So just to talk about that, how does the World Travel and Tourism Council benchmarks? So as you will see there, that they have taken the benchmarks of certain regions in the world, but they also have a global world benchmark. They benchmarked against 25 top countries in terms of infrastructure and popularity of tourism influx. And if you will notice here that from the MENA region, there's only one country, which is UAE, which is featuring in this index. And some of the sectors that they have benchmarked against is mining, oil and gas, which is all sectors of oil and gas. And then education, all type of education, higher education, which is universities and so forth. And you've got chemical and manufacturing, which is also fertilizers, pharmaceuticals, automotive industry, which is manufacturing of spare parts as well as accessories, communications, which is postal communications as well as telecommunications, banking and finance, which is all sectors of banking and finance services, including insurance. So this is some of the benchmarks that they used in this particular report. So what is the value index that they apply here? Okay. So they use, which is the, if you will see, there's the direct impact. This includes only direct employees in the related value of the accommodation, recreation, transportation, and other related sectors. Indirect, this measures the supply chain impact, also called inter-industry impact for each sector. And then the induced impact. This measures the impact of infrastructure development to support the sector and incomes earned directly and indirectly as they are spent in the local economy. So just let's delve into the figures for Middle East direct GDP by industry. So travel and tourism, direct GDP in the Middle East reached US 80 billion in 2013. Given the importance of oil extraction, the mining sector is by far the largest industry, if you will see on that graph. However, travel and tourism in Middle East is approximately the same size as the chemicals and manufacturing and education sectors. So overall, including its indirect and induced impacts, travel and tourism generated 202 billion in GDP, or 7.8% of Middle East GDP in 2013 came from travel and tourism sector. This is exceeding auto and higher education sectors. So quite phenomenal and fundamental. This is actually very pertinent slide to this conference in particular. So ranking direct employment by industry. Now, if you saw in the previous slide, mining was the biggest industry, but here the situation is slightly different. With 1.7 million direct employees in the Middle East, travel and tourism is one of the leading employers in the region, surpassing the job creation of all comparative industries except education. However, if you will notice, remarkably, travel and tourism directly employs more than twice as many people in the region than the mining, including oil extraction industry. And although, as you saw in the previous slide, mining is 10 times bigger industry than travel and tourism, this is quite an interesting comparison. So including its direct and indirect induced impacts, travel and tourism in Middle East sustained 4.5 million jobs in 2013, exceeding that of the mining, financial services, chemicals, banking, higher education, and communication sectors. At 6.8% of the regional employment, travel and tourism generated nearly 1 in 15 jobs in the Middle East. So whilst the world number is 1 in 11 jobs, in Middle East it's 1 in 15 jobs. This goes to show that this is an ideal platform for youth development, as it is easy to get started in the sector at an early age, and then grow within the industry and become a specialist. I myself started in this industry when I was just 17 years old from a travel agency. I then went into tourism industry, and now I'm serving in a hospitality industry. So I've really, over a period of 20, 25 years, have built a remarkable career for myself, which is very self-satisfying. And I would invite anybody who has any doubts to send their children or their sons and daughters into this industry. Please think again, because this is very, very lucrative and with great career progression and opportunities available. Just to touch base on the Saudi situation, around 45% of Saudi citizens are under the age of 15, and 2/3 are under the age of 30. At the end of the 2013, the sector directly employed over 700,000 laborers. Among them, 200,000 are only Saudi nationals, representing 7.3% of the total labor force and 8.3% of total employment in the private sector. The new tourism strategic plan estimated the number of the tourism direct and non-direct employment to reach 1.3 million by the year 2015, of which 800,000 will be in direct employment. So how are we going to reach this target? I think this is not a big goal. I think this can be achieved, but what we require is a real political will here, as well as a cultural understanding of this sector. So just the forecast for this sector, the Oxford Economics Global Industry Models project travel and tourism GDP to grow 4% per annum over the next decade. This is a great growth that the forecast from the mining and auto manufacturing sectors, as well as total economy. Travel and tourism will be among the industry leaders in economic growth over the next decade. So huge opportunities exist here to encourage our youth to take part in this industry. So just coming down to a little bit on the Saudi Arabia scenario, if you see in this map, you will observe that Saudi Arabia is indeed a very big country. If trying to fit it into this map, it can cover the entire Western Europe. And in comparison, if you see UAE, it just hardly manages to cover Austria. So why is Saudi Arabia so small in tourism? I think this is a very, very fundamental, important question to be asked today here. However, by all estimates, this trajectory is changing. According to a recent World Bank report, the Saudi government is forecasting 5.8% growth rate per annum and has budgeted a spend of USD 36 billion in tourism expenditure and hopes to create 1.3 million jobs by 2016, both direct and indirect. So Saudi Arabia attracts the biggest numbers of visitors in the region. We all know that. But most of it is because of the religious tourism. Only 20% of these numbers are from direct tourism receipts in Saudi Arabia in 2011. I just read a Saudi tourism report that estimates that, and I think Engineer Ahmed also mentioned here, that over 200,000 rooms, hotel rooms exist today in Saudi Arabia, and almost an equal amount of hotel apartments. But compare that with your tourism numbers. If you look at the case study of Dubai, Dubai has only 80,000 rooms in 2015. And they hope to achieve what Saudi Arabia has in terms of room and infrastructure today by 2020. However, their target for 2020 is to reach 20 million tourists. So there is something to be pondered about here, you know, and we've had a very good debate just before this session amongst the panel here that there is huge potential. You are not lacking in infrastructure. You have world-class infrastructure. What you now need is the human resource, and you need a political will and drive to take this sector to the next level and basically benefit from it. So I just want to touch upon the missing middle of 1 billion entrepreneurs here. By this, I mean my sisters and my counterparts, the ladies in the kingdom or really anywhere in the world. If China and India each represent roughly 1 billion emerging participants in the global marketplace, there's a third billion represent women who are entering the mainstream economy for the first time by 2020. So third billion was a term coined by Booz and Company in 2010. And basically, what it signifies is that they did a study and research that approximately 870 million women who have been living on contributing at subsistence level will enter the economic mainstream for the first time as producers, consumers, employees, entrepreneurs by 2020. In the following decade, this number could conceivably pass 1 billion, hence the term 1 billion. The economic impact of these women is expected to be the third massive billion after the economies of India and China. The report profiled 3 countries from the MENA region out of the total 120 countries benchmarked. Saudi Arabia was at 123rd number, UAE was 109, and Egypt was 108. And it signified that all the 3 countries are at the starting gate or the starting point of integration of this big economic bloc. In focusing on this region, it highlights the remarkable socio-economic transitions currently underway and to show that women represent a crucial part of those changes. In Saudi Arabia, with a multitude of cultural and legal restrictions, much is being done to more effectively integrate women into the labor force. However, a critical issue for a country with a demographic youth bulge and very high rates of unemployment combined with a significant reliance on expatriate labor. The question here is, can this billion be ignored? But although the country has made notable progress in recent years, much more remains to be done. Women constitute 57% of university graduates in Saudi Arabia, but they are still severely underrepresented in the workforce, with a participation rate among female nationals of just 12% in 2008. The unemployment rate for women is 28%, compared with 7% for men. The women who are working are primarily employed in the public sector. In 2009, just 6.9% of female Saudis in the workforce worked in the private sector. In sum, these numbers indicate that there is a gap in women meeting their full potential and contributing to Saudi Arabia's economy and growth. However, herein also lies the opportunity. The Saudi government's determination to reduce its dependence on foreign workers and nationalize its workforce has led to measures to attract more women into workplace. Several national policies, including feminization, a 5-year plan, human resource development fund, and programs, and the royal decrees have been aimed at introducing more women in the labor force. Saudi Arabia is at a critical junction, with an enormous population of young people who have the potential to bring the economy to the next level on the world stage. The large pool of educated women whose talent remains largely untapped will be crucial to this evolution. And travel and tourism as an industry can play a very effective role in meeting these targets. Women are ideal candidates to play host and welcoming and showcasing their home. In this case, their country to the world, while representing diversity and really painting a positive picture. So the traditional business models might not always apply in different geocultures and environments. Language, culture, traditions, temperaments, they all play a role. And travel and tourism is not immune to this factor. This is a business where all actors and players on the stage need to be local. And our first point of contact for the industry, soft ambassadors, so to speak. So it's essential to have the right training, support, and attitude by the local talent, backed by strong government policies, is very critical. I think some of the panels touched upon training and development. Today, the perception is that it is not easy for foreign companies to set up business with the same ease as, say, with some of its neighbors. So in conclusion, how we can create the awareness and ultimately jobs. Okay, I think my slide has gone funny here. Okay. So we advocate partnerships between the public and private sector, delivering results that match the needs of economies and local regional authorities. Finally, form alliances with international organizations in travel and tourism industry. I've mentioned some there, Society of International Travel Executives, MPI, Meeting Professional International, ICA. These are some of the bodies which represent the industry on the global stage. And create, and innovate. The kingdom should employ innovation to attract more business events through investing in new technologies, green meetings, and participating on the global initiatives. For example, Abu Dhabi is a member of Future Convention Cities initiative. Visitor entry and exit formalities should be kept to a minimum. If there is one message I want to leave here today, I want to leave this. Generally, for most visitors, obtaining an entry visa is a formality which is not easy. To this end, a facility for obtaining visas on the internet or to attend the events like these should be facilitated. Incentive procedures, the meetings activity is subsector of the tourism industry. Consequently, it needs support as much as the tourism industry. The kingdom should support the meetings activity through providing incentives to the current and prospective Saudi organizations. And finally, travel and tourism certification programs in schools and universities. I think we had a discussion before this session that where does the buck stop and where does the buck start? And I think it's very critical to create awareness amongst the youth about this industry at a very early grassroots level. So to have comprehensive internship programs with international companies or local travel agency groups, I think that the tourism board and the convention bureau should work with some of these bodies which are listed up there in trying to develop such programs and educate the youth, and in turn the youth can educate their families, because I believe in this region your career is a combined decision, that this is an industry that is as good as being an engineer or a doctor or a pilot. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sumeira. I share your enthusiasm and optimism for the potential in this sector. You know, it seems like there's still such a long way to go, but I was involved in 2000 in helping the SCT in the original formulation of its 10-year strategic plan. And it's amazing how far we've come, but I also believe that there's so much more to do in lengthening the stay of religious tourists here so that they're not staying somewhere else and visiting here for a short time, for getting better penetration of domestic tourism. So a lot to do, but the potential is there and we have the right leadership at the SCTA. Let's move quickly to our last presentation, and our next presenter is Mr. Mohinder Singh. Mr. Singh is the Dean of the Land Transport Authority of Singapore. The Academy conducts research and training and exchange of knowledge on land transport policy and planning. And Mr. Singh is not just an academic, he's also a practitioner. Prior to becoming the Dean of the Academy, he was a Director of Planning of the Land Transport Authority. He's got a lot of experience, and what he'd like to do is share his experience from Singapore of the important role that transport plays in the economic development of a country and in turn in job creation. Mr. Singh.
Is it on? Yep. Thank you, Phil, for the introduction. I will say my opening words from here. First of all, I would like to thank the organizer for giving me this opportunity to participate in this panel and to come to the nice, lovely city of Jeddah. I will keep my comments quite brief because I think we are I'm the last speaker of the last session of the long day, so I'll keep it quite brief and then we can leave a bit more room for questions and answers. Now, I think most of you know Singapore is a very small country. It has got no resources. Unlike the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, you are blessed with so many resources. You have ample, abundant land, abundant oil, abundant natural resources. Name it, you have got everything. But in our case, the only resource we have is a human resource. And that is something which we have nurtured, which we have from the very early days tried to develop, educate, etc. And perhaps the only other natural resource we have is we are along a shipping route. And that's why we play an important role in the port. Now, I'm not sure, some of you may not know that Singapore in the early days, in 1960s and in the 1970s, was a very, very poor country. It had very high unemployment. The majority of our people lived in slums, in squatters, and the population was growing. There were a lot of young people without jobs. We had to provide housing. We had to provide industry. There were no industries other than the port. And so very early on in the days, policies were put in place to try and develop Singapore economically. And these policies have been sustained over the years. And one of the key things that the government took particular interest in and has continued to do so is the role of infrastructure in the economic development of Singapore. And not particularly, and among them a key component is transport, and how transport has played and continues to play a very important role in the economic development of Singapore and in job wealth creation. I think most of you know that transport plays an important role. Many of you know that transport shapes cities, public transport particularly. In the early days, I'm sure Even here in Jeddah, it was a walking city before the advent of the trains and the motor car, which has continued to change cities. So transport, this also applies to what sort of vision you want to develop for transport. In our case, in Singapore, given our circumstances, given our size, given our location, we developed an integrated transport vision which was based on public transport as the key mode of transport in moving our people. And that has gone on since the early days, and the government has invested very heavily in transport development, recognizing the important role that transport plays in economic development of a city. Also, the fact that transport provides access to jobs. Transport allows you to do all the social activities you want to do. I mean, unlike some other things, transport is not an end good. It is an enabler. You take transport because you want to do something, not because you just want to take transport and just move around and drive around. So transport brings direct and indirect benefits. Indirect benefits are economic development. Direct benefits are people who are employed in transport, who are trained to operate the metro systems, the buses, the road pricing systems that we have in Singapore, etc. And this is similar to other transport infrastructure. I'm here talking about land transport, but this could equally apply in our case to air transport, to sea transport. You know, we are a hub airport, we are aviation hub. We are also one of the largest ports in the world. So this could also apply to that. And and this is ongoing, as I said. And I will have a short video after my comments to show the plans we have now. But before I do that, I want to talk about the linkage between transport and education and training of manpower. Now, there are two categories of training that we have consistently tried to apply in transport. One is what we refer to as pre-employment training, in the sense that you have to train the manpower, you have to train the people to take on the jobs which are in transport, be they planning of transport system, designing, operating the transport system, managing the traffic, etc. So that is something where, in my case, the academy works very closely with our institutions of higher learning, the universities, the polytechnics, the institutes of technical education, to try and infuse the transport education, the transport curriculum component into these courses, so that when the graduates come out of this program, they have relevant training in order to get the jobs in the transport sector. And secondly, the second part is in terms of continuing education, which means that once you are in the transport sector, you continually need to upgrade your skills, either because technology is changing or because you're progressing in your career. And so that's the other component where continuing education is important in the transport sector. And that's another area where we in the academy works very closely by providing courses for manpower development of the transport industry. And this cuts across the whole spectrum of jobs. Like I said, managers, engineers, architects, technicians, operators of transport systems, maintenance people, etc. And I think one thing which perhaps other people mentioned is branding. Branding is important. I think we need to brand the jobs properly so that people are attracted to it. And I think finally, before I end, I think don't underestimate the impact of investing in education and training. The dividends may not be immediate, but as you in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia build up your transport system, at the same time, this presents an opportunity for you to train your local people to take on the jobs and keep it on a sustainable mode. With that, I thank you very much. And if I may just ask the organizers to just play the short video. It's a few minutes.
Every day is a new journey to discover new places, to meet new people, to build new memories. Here at the Land Transport Authority, we lay the tracks for the flurry of activities in this thriving city. A constellation of rail stations stretches out across the island, and within it lies an extensive fleet of buses that ferries commuters to wide-ranging destinations. We are always on the move, fueled with immense vitality, injecting rhythm into every aspect of our lives. Every moment full of drive and energy. Ever ready to meet each new day. It is up and running at first light, with no signs of slowing down at night. Always moving, never stopping. This is our land transport system. Within a city in motion, the networks are complex and the pace may be frantic. These complexities are inevitable, especially so when it comes to regulating the ebb and flow of the entire nation's movement across trains, buses, and private transport. It takes experience and empathy to understand the demands of each journey, to formulate plans not only with mind, but also with heart. And recognizing that in formulating those blueprints, the community is pivotal in helping to shape improvements for a transport system that meets their needs and way of life. Amidst the hustle and bustle of this ever-changing world, we monitor and regulate traffic through different initiatives and innovative technologies, ensuring that this dynamic city of ours never stands still. New challenges excite us. New technology enables us. We tap into technology to explore endless possibilities, to make transport journeys more efficient, more comfortable, to lend a helping hand to the less mobile. And to craft intricate systems and sturdy infrastructure. With foresight and precision, the Land Transport Master Plan sketches out roadmaps of the future. Connecting people and places, hopes and dreams. Where people can get together more easily and comfortably. To make each trip enjoyable and worthwhile for our loved ones. And giving people alternative choices in getting to their destinations. Allowing more people to travel at faster speeds with greater ease. Envisioning a more connected city. Because at LTA, we believe that connectivity goes beyond steel and concrete. It isn't just about the longest railway lines, the most extensive bus networks, or the widest expressways. It is also about making it a journey for all to ensure that no one gets left behind. Because the commute matters as much as the destination. To keep pace with a growing population, keeping in mind future demands and needs. To have thoughtful developments for a more sustainable tomorrow. In this city that celebrates life, each destination signals a new beginning, and each pause a short transit. Our next step lies ahead to help all Singaporeans stay connected to their goals, aspirations, and lifestyles. Because the commuter is at the center of what we do in LTA. standing by our promise that we keep your world moving.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Mohinder, for sharing the experience, the enviable experience of Singapore. I think you could use that film as a public relations film to attract both riders to public transport and for employees to work in the sector. I've just been told by the organizers that we're a little over time, so I think we're not going to have any questions. And I don't know if we're going to do the voting. Will? We're doing the voting? Yep. Okay. So we've got some 5 questions for the audience. But just while that's coming on, I'd really like to thank my panelists for their presentations. Certainly some really useful international experience, but also some very practical regional and domestic experience. So thank you very much for my panelists. Okay, the first question. Are we already doing enough to promote domestic tourism within the kingdom? Do you agree that we're already doing enough, or do you disagree with that? Press number 1 to agree, or 2 to disagree. That's a fast vote. That kind of reminds me of what happened in Ukraine. Okay. So 67% disagree, and so there's room for improvement, Engineer Ahmed. The next question. Mass public transportation is the right answer for cities within Saudi Arabia. Is it going to work, or that's not something that'll work here? It's good outside, but it's not going to work in Saudi Arabia. So do you agree that it's the right thing, metros, buses, or do you disagree? Ooh, there's a close one. Okay, so Andrew, there's a little bit of work there in terms of the branding. You should borrow Mohinder's presentation and his film. Will young Saudis ever see the travel and tourism sector as an attractive career destination? So same thing, massive employment potential outside the kingdom, other parts of the world. Does that hold true here? Are we going to be able to make it an attractive sector? Okay, very interesting. A little bit of work to do here also. So certainly there has to be an education component with that, starting at the grassroots. The fourth question, the tourism sector provides the right environment for feminization. This should be interesting. If we're having trouble with employment overall, does it provide the right environment for job creation for national women? More voters. Okay, not so much different for the men or for the women. Okay, and the last question? Tony should be given open skies in Saudi Arabia for a low-cost airline to create the number of jobs that he's done with AirAsia. Agree or disagree? Yeah. This will determine how much we can charge for your license. Yes, sure. Here we go. I thought I'd be able to say Ahmed wa sahlan. I think it's late in the day. All right, thank you very much, everybody, for your contribution. I know it's late, for your voting, your honest voting. There's work to be done, and thank you to my panelists.
شكرا للسيد
Thank you,
فيل غاندير
Phil.
وشكرا ايضا لجميع
And thank
المشاركين
you,
في
all
هذه
participants in this
رجاء
session.
البقاء على المسرح.
Please remain seated
تكريمكم يقوم بهذا التكريم السيد مازن
in order to
رئيس مجلس إدارة
honor
الغرفة
you.
الصناعية
The award to be given by Mr. Mazen Batarji, Vice Chairman of the Board of Directors of the Jeddah Chamber of Commerce. Of course, there are some important points which were raised during this session, which was about opportunities and barriers for growth and job creation in the tourism and transportation sector. For Gandier, Engineer Ahmed, Sumeira Isaacs, Tony Fernandes, Andrew Clippers, and Mohinder Singh. Thank you all for your participation in the last session of the second day of Jeddah Economic Forum 2014. Tomorrow there will be a very important session in which one of the most important figures globally will speak about social media. He is one of the co-founders of Facebook, so we expect to see you tomorrow at 9:45. Thank you for your attendance and see you tomorrow.